it's June from Avstar Observatory. I just wanted to give you a little breakdown of what we've got planned in the short term here at the observatory with a few of the things that we're doing. Before I do, I want to say big thanks to our patrons and those that make the one-off donations on PayPal. It's very important. We don't raise a great deal of money here at the observatory, but what we do, as you guys know, is make the most of what we do have. And even in these testing times that we're in, with what we're faced with this global pandemic. So big thanks to you guys, and a special thanks as always to Bob, Kathy and Doug and Jen, for your amazing support that you've given us last year and continue to do so this year. Guys, it is going beyond reasonable what you do, and we're only grateful, and I know that a lot of the subscribers are as well. So one of the things that we've been faced with this year is getting more of these muon detectors completed and built. But one of the problems I'm having with these muon detectors is keeping them reliable. We've had one going now for quite some time here at the observatory, and I've had to at sometimes give it a little bit of maintenance. And if these are going to go out in the field, they have one thing they need to be is reliable. We can't afford to have these muon detectors go out with a magnetometer which is very reliable. We've never had any problems, or really much, so to speak, with these things. They're very robust, but these we've had a few problems with, which has got to be put right before we send them out. So again, these was completed. Went and done a trial test on them again the other day and found that the screens weren't working. So there's a problem with the screens. I don't know whether it's the poor quality of the screens, but I have had similar problems with the one that's been most reliable out of all three. So there's a bit of troubleshooting to do with these over the next few days to try and find out why they keep failing. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next few days. The other thing is as well, calibrating these is not easy. There's a trigger voltage, and MIT suggests it should be at 50, which that number that you can adjust in the program refers to the voltage in the peak holder, I believe, in this part of the circuitry. And if the trigger voltage is too low, it doesn't go to the next stage where it goes through the peak hold circuitry and then into the amplification of the signal, and then into the actual onboard Arduino, where it makes a count and then it becomes visible on the screen. So there's a bit of troubleshooting to do. I mean, the last thing I want to do is send these out into the field and they come back a couple of weeks later with a fault. So we've got to sort that problem out. I think one of the problems that we've got with these is that MIT tried to just do too much with the very limited capacity of memory on the Arduino Nanos, and as a result of that, they're running at full peg. With they even programmed the EEPROM just so that they could get Cosmic Watch up on the screen. I don't think that's a good idea, and the fact that they chose a nano is not a good idea as well, because of the limited capacity. And what that capacity does is stops us being able to see something on the screen as well as record it to an SD card. So I would have, if I would have been MIT, I would have gone for a Tinsy, which has a lot more capacity. You could run the screen and other applications like the SD card recorder all in one. So maybe at some point in this year we're going to give this an upgrade, probably have a new PCB board made, and hopefully try and make the whole thing a little bit more reliable. There is a piece of code that MIT in the United States put in this, that if any one of the values of the components on the back of the board there was to change, then it would either stop the old device working, or it would change things like the different voltage peak output. So again, I don't know why they did that, and then made it freely available for everybody. I mean, we are finding out now that there has been a few things that have not been completely accurate with these muon detectors, And one of those is that, you know, you can't possibly build these for £100 when the silicon photo multiplier comes in at £80. The only way you could do that is if you was probably buying 300,000 silicon photo multipliers, and then the price would come right down. That would probably be the only way you'd do it. Or if they was being donated to you, which might be the case, because if you look on the PCB board on the silk screen, you can see that there are some other names on there, and maybe these are the names of the people that donated to MIT the silicon photo multipliers. But anyhow, that's one of the things we've got to get sorted. You know, I can't send any of these out. Well, we can send one out to Bali. I'll be in touch with that person that said they'd take one of these to Bali with us at a short space of time. But in total, we've got 4 magnetometers that are ready to go. We just need the accompanying muon detectors that are going to be hopefully reliable by then, and we can get them out into the field. And that will allow us to decipher how much muons are bound in a weak area like the South Atlantic anomaly, as opposed to somewhere which has relatively a large amount of protection and it seems to be increasing as time goes on. And I'm talking about that's coming over the continent of the southern part of Australia right now. There's a large intensity of magnetism moving up over the continent, and that should pose more protection against muons. We know why we're getting muons in the on the ground is because the interactions in the upper atmosphere with cosmic rays colliding with those upper atmospheric particles, and in turn producing these elementary particles like muons here on the ground. So if we have an increase in muons, we know that there's more collisions in the upper atmosphere with cosmic rays as a result of 2 things: a weakened magnetosphere and a low solar output. The low solar output is our primary defence. It stops all the cosmic rays coming into the atmosphere because we have this invisible shield called a heliosphere, and when the sun's healthy, it pushes it out, you know, the heliosphere. And if the heliosphere is extended well beyond our solar system, you know, it also pushes all that cosmic rays around it, gives us more protection. But if we have a low solar output, like we have, a diminishing one over the last 33 years, the heliosphere begins to shrink, and that reduces the amount of protection we get. On top of that, guys, as you know, I've said it many times before, the magnetosphere has reduced 20 to 25% over the last 50 or so years, and continues gradually to reduce, and we're starting to see some things happen with our magnetometers that we've got here in the UK, Hong Kong, Australia, and over in the United States. It's a slow trend of slowly decaying intensity that we're measuring, and in some cases, you know, it has been a lot faster than in others. Like in Hong Kong, we have seen, you know, probably a 10 or 15% reduction in the intensity in that region. So, you know, we are getting closer to a couple of things. We're getting closer, first of all, to that 40-degree mark where we could cross, the poles could cross from the strong interactions which holds it over the northern hemisphere into the weak, and at that point the magnetosphere should come down and the pole should go into its reversal. Whether it's an excursion or a completed reversal remains to be seen, but doesn't make any difference either way, because there will be a period of time where the magnetosphere strength has reduced. Now, while we're on the topic of the sun, I wanted to share a theory with you. It goes into a little bit of depth about time travel, and first of all, on that note, time travel you may think is impossible, but it was in the 60s, I believe, that 2 atomic clocks was put on planes. One was put on a plane, one was left on the runway, and they was calibrated exactly the same. The plane obviously was able to do about 400-500 miles an hour for a prolonged period of time. When it was brought back to the other atomic clock, when the plane landed, the fact that one plane had been moving at a greater speed, 600 miles an hour, let's say for argument's sake, had showed that it had slightly reduced in speed. It had recorded less time than the one on the ground. This is an indication that, you know, speed is relevant to time. And I'm going to explain in a minute why we're talking about this, but first of all, it proved that time travel was possible. Even the muons that get smashed in the upper atmosphere end up on the ground. Only through time relativity do they make it to the ground, because their lifespan is so short. There's no way they could travel at the speed of light, even covering the distance they do, if there wasn't something else at play. And of course, it is the fact that they are travelling so fast that allows them to evade time, which gives them more distance in ability to travel. But it's not really muons that I'm going to get at. There's something else. I first of all want to say that if you think that our governments around the world understood for 1 minute that they could see a difference in time behaviour with speed, that they wouldn't have progressed that, because I think that they would have, and they would have invested greatly into it. And whether they have the ability now to see into the past or into the future is something that has not been made clear to us, whether they have or not. I'll just say that they knew it was possible in the 1950s. The other thing is, and the more important thing I want to talk about with relationship to time travel, is our sun. And I had a theory which I'm going to share with you with regards to that. But again, just before I do, we will get to the point. Can you imagine if there is an ability in the future, or even now, to travel back into time, or even into the future? You know, there will be certain times in our history, or our present, or our future, which will be of great interest to even historians. And if there is an ability to travel backwards and forwards into time, there are going to be specific points of time that are going to be of more interest than others. And we could be at one of these right now with this pandemic, because we don't know the full extent of what will happen. And I just want to go back to, you know, what we believe happened with the dinosaurs. I hope you find this topic an interesting one, and it's keeping you interesting, because we're going to get to the point in a minute. I think you're going to enjoy the theory. So if we go back into the prehistoric times, we know that at some point most of the dinosaurs were wiped out pretty much at the same time. Was it because a big meteorite impact hit the ground and sent a dust cloud up, covering the whole of the earth, and choked the dinosaurs? Or was it the fact that, you know, no sunlight was able to penetrate the surface of the earth at that point in time, because of the amount of dust that was in the atmosphere, killed all the vegetation, and in turn killed, first of all, the vegetarian dinosaurs, or the herbivores, and then the meat-eating dinosaurs, and of course wiped them all out? Or was it a virus? We don't know where this will lead right now. I'm just posing a few theories. But what about in 5 years' time, we are no longer on this planet as a result of this COVID virus? What about if it does mutate into something else and wipes out humans on this planet completely? You know what? Extinction level events are not uncommon in the history of this planet. And it doesn't mean to say that in the future there won't be either. But we don't know what is going to be the outcome of this. But there are some people that are going around right now saying this is not, you know, no more than a common cold. And, you know, there are also people saying, oh, the common cold kills millions every year, globally. But there's something else about this virus. The fact that it has travelled around the world so fast, and that's largely because of our technological advancement this day and age. We do have the ability to travel pretty much anywhere we want within a 24-hour period of time, because we have aircraft that can take us to that point where we want to go. Doesn't matter where, we can get there within 24 hours. And that is largely how this virus has been able to spread so fast. You can blame the governments for that. You can blame China for that. And at some point, that book is coming back to China, regardless. You know, I mean, have you heard some of the things that are going on right now? We've got Russians accusing the United States Special Forces of deliberately putting that virus in China. And of course, there is a lot of conspiracy theories with regards to whether this has been made in a laboratory or whether it came from bat soup, and so on and so forth. But I think, you know, the point is that it is here, it is out of the bag, and it has travelled globally. And the last thing we want is to see this mutate into something even more serious. Now, I will say this. This is a strain of pneumonia and so was the bubonic plague, a strain of pneumonia. And, the only thing that deciphers something from a plague to something, of a pandemic, just a pandemic, is the fact of whether it reaches, I believe, ground zero. So ground zero pneumonia is the same as the bubonic plague, as far as I'm aware. That is correct in saying that. So we could have already a plague, and if you only go back into the history over a couple of 100 years, we have had one of these before, and it wiped out half the world's population at that time. Now you are probably saying to me, well, Gene, we live in a different day and age where technology is far greater than what it was then, and we understand more about these things than what we did then. But I am seeing doctors in New York, in Italy, and all around the world where these pandemics, where this virus is at its greatest, and they're saying, it is a case of people come in, we ventilate them, and they die, and we start the process off again. You've probably seen this on the news today with that guy in America, the doctor in America, saying that, it's much worse than what people think. And if you believe in your naive ability that this is just affecting elderly people, well, we have people coming in at all age ranges. So, it leads me to believe that there's something more serious about this than is literally being led by the media for us to believe. I think the implications of what we're going to see are going to pay out a lot worse than that. But, we are not here really to talk about the virus, because we all have that being pushed on us 24/7. And even here, excuse me, in the UK, we are now in lockdown. We can go out once a day for exercise, once a day for necessities from the shops, and only go to work if it's a necessity, or we can only go out if we are going out to help people. Pretty much we have been put in solitary confinement, and we have been given the same rights as prisoners, being laid out once a day. And our freedoms have gone at this point in time. Our human rights have gone. We are not allowed to have a right for religion, freedom to communicate with who we want, a right to, to a lot of things anyhow. But the point is this, getting back to time travel and our sun. What if our sun, and there's not a lot new about that. Obviously, we have these scientists that say this is a plasma ball. We have this. There are some that the current understanding of the sun, when I was studying at university, was that the sun was a giant, nuclear furnace that was going through helium and hydrogen and converting that, and it was producing itself the way it is. But we've got a lot of scientists trying to recreate the actual output of the sun. But the problem is that in these facilities, and they've spent trillions on fusion reactions, that's what they say, it's a nuclear fusion reaction going on in the sun, and they're trying to copy it. I've just got another theory on this, which I've had for a long time, about what our sun is. And I will say this, if it is nuclear fusion, then where are the neutrinos that account for all the chain reactions? Because when you have nuclear fusion of any sorts, helium, hydrogen, you get neutrinos coming off it. We can measure the neutrinos coming off the sun, and there just simply isn't enough neutrinos to support nuclear fusion. So there's something else going on with the sun. And its behaviour is quite odd, because it's only in the photosphere of the sun where the temperatures are at the greatest. It's not the surface of the sun. It's actually thousands of miles out where the photosphere is, and it's also at this point, the photosphere is where the photons of light, tiny light particles that take 8 minutes apparently to reach the Earth's surface. It's only at that point of the photosphere where they actually leave the gravitational pull of the sun's massive gravity. But what about, here's my theory, what about if the sun exploded millions of years ago and did so at a greater speed than light, and instead of it travelling outwards, it just stopped? And only at that point of the photosphere where the matter comes past the photosphere, is it allowed to slow down, and then it is able to be pushed out by the explosion that happened millions of years ago. And it is another theory that would probably support supernovae, only at the point where the whole process slows down enough to come out of the speed warp that it's in, that's holding it in its position now from completely exploding. Only at that point where it slows down to that point does it explode. So the point, so just to go back, right, the sun exploded many millions of years ago. And the fact that it did it in such a harsh manner, it accelerated that quick to the point where it froze because it entered a time warp of its own. So according to it, inside the warp it's travelling out, but from the perspective of ourselves, it is where it is and remains that way. And it's only until it passes the photosphere does those little particles slow down enough where they get accelerated with the explosion, and it's then them that are travelling at the speed of light that reached the Earth in 8 minutes. So whatever happened when it exploded, it happened greater than the speed of light, and therefore froze it in its entirety. And that's probably why fusion doesn't work in fusion reactors like they are trying to create. It would be better if they went to understand, in trying to create something that explodes a lot faster than, what we relatively know, like nuclear explosions. It's got to be something faster than that. So the chain reaction has to be a lot quicker in order to get fusion. And perhaps if we could contain a small explosion of that sort, then we could probably harness the power of it. But, there's not enough neutrinos to come off the sun at the moment to support the standard model of nuclear fusion. So, there's got to be something else, and I'm just putting that out there in this video as a matter of interest and just sharing some out of the box theories with you guys, and just some of the thoughts on some of the things that we have to deal with right now. So about 4 weeks ago I told you to go out and get your shopping before the panic started. The panic started weeks ago, and for some reason people thought that it'd be a good idea to store a lot of toilet paper. It's been really annoying, because I'm not going out there to buy bulk toilet paper, but I would like to make sure I do have enough to see us through the month, which has gone very hard because they are still panic buying in this country, and I believe in other countries, toilet paper. I wonder if they're buying food as well. Strange times, no matter what, anyhow, isn't it, guys, that we're in? And, we're going to see where all this goes, but I don't think Donald Trump is going to be able to pull off what he's suggested in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully by Easter he thinks that he can get this under control. He's got absolutely no chance of doing that. I think he's just trying to give people a little sense of positivity, be optimistic about it, but from what I understand, from what I've been doing with these algorithms, we've got a long way to go. There's a lot more people that are going to get ill over the coming months, and it is going to be around about 30 days before we start to enter the peak, and we are only going to be starting in 30 days on that peak, and by then we'll probably have tens of thousands of people already inundating the health service in the UK, and we're going to continue to see this around the world. I don't believe for 1 minute, by the way, that China, in the flick of a switch, managed to get this under control. And the numbers that are coming out of China right now are so low. I think what they've done is drop the iron curtain on information leaking out of China, and they are going to continue to do this. But I think somewhere down the line, there's going to be a knock on China's door, and they're going to be held responsible for not containing a problem, which they should have, because at first they tried to cover it up, and when it was too hard for them to do that, there was an admittance. Well, they are going to be held accountable for their inability to contain this to their country, and there's going to be a lot of countries, governments around the world, that are also going to be held accountable for the loss of lives and failing to act sooner. We tried this strategy in the UK, which was completely off the cuff. It was something no one other nation was doing, and it was so bad, this herd strategy, where herd inoculation or herd But basically what they was trying to do at the beginning of this was get as many people to be infected, and then at some point, we would inoculate ourselves with immunity. So it was herd immunity that we was trying to do. But what this done was put the most vulnerable people at risk, and most of these people that were at risk have died already. Not all of them, but they will do. But it was a bad strategy, and it was at the cost of lives, and the British government are going to be held responsible at some point for that. The economy worldwide is going to enter an unprecedented recession. And it's strange because we've always thought that it'd be, the magnetic reversal that took the grid down, that caused a food shortage because of the lack of logistics, but we seem to have skipped that part and gone straight into the food shortages. But we've been watching, as we've been following the food production around the world slowly deteriorate, good arable agricultural land going offline as a result of the climate change itself, as a result of two things, Grand Solar Minimum and the pole reversal. So we've got another big obstacle. Even after we get over this one with the virus, we've got that obstacle in the probably not too distant future, probably 3 to 7 years, I believe. And, we're going to learn a lot from this. I do expect at some point at the peak to start to see some form of social unrest, especially if the governments fail to get the necessities to the people that are self-quarantining voluntarily. At the moment, I know I say voluntarily because we can go out if we want and we can just disobey all the rules the government have set, if we need to. If it's a case of emergency and we find ourselves having to do that, we can do that. And there's nothing the government can do about that other than hope that we do follow the rules. But, they need to do a lot more. Right now, they've shut the country down, and they've shut the country down for millions of self-employed people, which at this present time, they've not delivered anything. They are proposing to do something this afternoon for this, part of the problem. But, they are paying 80% of wages for people that have shut down their businesses of non-essential companies. And, we are seeing a massive rally of effort of volunteers stepping forward to support the NHS in this country. That will help. Resources will help stem the flow of casualties. But no matter what this government does, I don't think they fully anticipate the amount of people that are going to be ill in the next coming weeks, because the virus has pretty much already spread out of the knowledgeable amount than what the government thinks so. And there are still people moving around spreading the virus simply because there isn't enough support coming from the government. So we're going to see a lot of things, guys. As a result of quantitative easing, which we're seeing now, America has just said they will print up and quantitative ease up to the tune of £2 trillion. Massive amount of money. See the government extend on that £130 billion themselves. And you as well as I do, when you add more money into the system, it just devalues it because it's more abundant. But whether it does get to ourselves at the bottom of the pecking order will be another thing. We'll see what happens. But it's a complete catastrophic time that we're all in. So guys, we're going to keep on doing what we do here at the observatory. We're going to try and find out what the problem is with these muon detectors, and hopefully get these sets set out to where we need them to go in Brazil and South Australia. And we've also got one of these magnetometers shortly to go out into Bali. So we're going to continue pushing forward with what we do. Quick heads up on those people that asked me to build one of their silver colloidal generators for them. The parts have all been ordered. There'll be no more opportunities at this point. Even if you want me to build one, there won't be any more opportunities at this point until these have been sent out. And we know that one of the components, even despite hours of searching on eBay for them, we're talking about the 3-volt pump that runs it, won't get air until the 3rd of April till the 7th of April, as far as I'm aware. That's because it's coming from another country. and yeah, coming from China as well. So it isn't coming on a ship though; it's coming on air freight. So let's say, and I have had a couple of things come recently from China still, so it's not completely 100% shut down. I do believe people are working from home, sending these components out, and they are trickling into the UK still. So I've got your names and addresses hopefully in the PayPal. All as I know is that 5 people ordered one. I thought I'd order enough components to build 6 because, as always, there's always someone else at the last minute that comes in, and even after the deadline had passed, that person had already sent the money to the PayPal. So you're very lucky. I did order enough to build the 6. Maybe next month, when we've built all these and we've got them sent out, we might do another little batch. We'll see if you are interested in that. But I can't see why you wouldn't be interested in colloidal silver at the moment, especially if you can manufacture it at whatever quantity you want. I mean, I've got a litre stored now, and there's another litre which is due to be poured out today. And at some point, if I can get a few quid together, I might drop some gold electrodes in there. And I know gold is an inert metal, and it doesn't really bond with anything. But the good thing about gold is, if it is in a colloidal form of water, along with the silver that does play an active role, it can do one thing, and I believe it will help the electrical connections, at least, or the conductivity of your brain. I believe it could do that, and it can't be a problem, again, because it doesn't react with anything, gold doesn't. But I just think having that in there, as well as the silver that we know does respond to boosting your immune system up with the ability to kill viruses and bacteria, and being a sterilising form. Because what I was also thinking of doing is just an ordinary pack of wet wipes, pouring some silver colloidal all over those wet wipes, so that when you wipe your hands as well, you're also protecting that barrier with silver colloidal or active silver nanoparticles. And that can't be a bad thing either. So that was one idea for my silver colloidal that I'm making. So yeah, maybe next month I'll get on to building some more. But more importantly, guys, I know it's hard, but let's try and keep the support going for the observatory, because we are a proactive observatory. We're a proactive channel on YouTube, and we do have an amazing website. I hope you agree with that, where all this data comes together, as well as a lot of other data from a lot of other anomalies that are taking place, like solar, Arctic ice content, Schumann resonance, cosmic rays, global data that we collect on our magnetometers, the TriMag system, the magnetosphere strength, lots and lots of things, guys. So if you can help support the observatory, especially in this time where things are slowly pulling back for us, it'd be great. Have an amazing day. I hope you're enjoying weather like we are, nice and bright but cool. And at this point in time, look after your friends and your family first and foremost. Make sure you abide by some of the rules that they've set out. Try not to go out if you don't have to, but also keep a vigilant eye on those vulnerable people in your homes and neighbourhoods. There may be some elderly people that live on their own, and for that reason alone, it's very sad. But if they cannot even go out now, it's going to be even sadder. I'm not saying, knock on everybody's door and possibly spread the germs, but just keep a vigilant eye. Perhaps drop them a note in the door saying that if you need anything, here's my phone number. And really, I mean anything, food, gas or electricity, blankets, just let us know. We can, keep an eye on you as well. It's the community spirit that, I'm encouraging you guys to take on board as well. So I'll say nothing more than that, than what I usually do. Links down there, guys, and as always, bye for now.